Hi, 5th grade. Today we're going to be reading Lunch Money, chapter 18, and this chapter is called Complicated. You should be on page 171 and ready to follow along. 3 minutes after Morris showed Greg the book club flyer, they rushed into Mr. Z's room, and Morris said, "Mr. Z, we've got to ask you something." Startled, Mr. Z looked up from the quizzes he was grading. "Oh, sure. About math?" he said hopefully. Greg shook his head. "Look." He put the flyer on the teacher's desk and pointed at the book of Garfield's comics. "How come it's okay for kids to buy books like that here at school, but it's not okay for us to sell our mini comic books?" Mr. Z picked up the flyer and flipped through it. He had seen packets of these in the office by the teachers' mailboxes, but they always went to the reading and language arts teachers, never to him. Very interesting. "So," said Mora, "does the book club have special permissions from the school committee or something?" Mr. Z nodded. "I guess they must." Mora said, "Well then, it's not fair, because our comics aren't so different from some of these books, and they're selling them right here at school. Here, take a look at this." Mora had borrowed back her new copy of The Lost Unicorn from Allison, and she handed it to Mr. Z. "Greg and I finished it this weekend, and I know it's not supposed to be here at school, but it's been hidden away all day. And I just wanted you to see it, because it's good, and it's not even violent." Mr. Z began to thumb through the comic. The drawings were exceptional, especially for student work. Remembering Mrs. Davenport, he glanced toward his doorway, and then Mora flipped through the rest of the pages. Mora was right. There was less violence in this comic book than there was in a lot of classroom classic fairy tales. And looking at the credits on the back cover, he saw that these two former enemies had apparently worked together. Mr. Z smiled and nodded his approval, and immediately Morris said, "So, we want special permission too, like the book clubs, to sell our comics. Who should we talk to?" Mr. Z looked from Morris' face to Greg's. He could see there was no point in trying to take them out of this. He took a deep breath and decided to try anyway. "Well, the school committee has a meeting once a month, but the principals of each school are always at the meetings, and you already know how Mrs. Davenport feels about comic books." Then, handing the little book back to Mora, he said, "And please put that away." "But what about these comics?" said Greg, pointing at the flyer again. "She's letting these be bought and sold at school, so that's not fair." Mr. Z nodded. "I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just telling you that what you're asking is, well, it's complicated." Mr. Z pulled a handful of papers from the inbox on his desk, flipped through 5 or 6 sheets, and then said, "The school committee meets this Thursday night at 7:30 in the municipal building, and I guess if you want to go and talk to them, there's nothing stopping you, but it's complicated." Greg shook his head. "You keep saying complicated, complicated. Why? We're just asking for the same deal the book club is getting. What's so complicated about that?" "Well," said Mr. Z, "for one thing, book clubs are big companies, and I know they have teachers and librarians and reading experts working for them, helping to pick the books. And on the back of the flyer here, it says that teachers get free books for their classrooms when they send in the orders. So the book clubs help teachers. Plus, they're helping kids learn and getting them excited about reading and books. And you're just a couple of kids who want to sell some little comics and maybe make some money." Greg said, "But aren't book clubs making money?" Mr. Z nodded. "I'm sure they are. So there's still no difference," said Greg. "And we can give away free copies of our comics to teachers. That's not a problem." "Yes," said Mora. "And we'll even get some of our profits to the school library fund. 10% of our profits for buying new library books." "What?" said Greg. The girl was giving his money away. His money! Mora ignored him. "So what do you think, Mr. Z? Don't you think we have a chance?" "Well, I suppose so," he said. "Great," said Mora, "because I already told Greg on Friday. You said you could help us with business stuff. So this is great. What should we do first?" Mr. Z gulped. "Oh, you mean, well, I really don't think I could. Mr. Z looked from Mora's face to Greg's and then back to Mora's, and he saw there was no way out. So he decided to stall for time. "Well, I guess first I'd better do a little thinking. All of us should. And you should both talk to your parents about this, because they ought to know what you're thinking about doing. So how about we all take some time, and then we can get together again to compare our notes? How's that sound?" Moore made a face. "It sounds slow. Because the school committee meeting is Thursday night, so we have to meet again tomorrow before school, like at 7:30. Greg nodded. "Before school, okay, Mr. Z? See you tomorrow." And both kids turned and rushed out. Greg to soccer practice, and Moore to catch her bus. Sitting there at his desk, Mr. Z felt like he'd been run over by a couple of go-karts. He tried to remember what he was doing only 2 minutes earlier. Oh yes, grading quizzes. He picked up his red pen, but Mr. Z couldn't concentrate, and even the peace and quiet of room 27 didn't help. Sure, it was calm and orderly now, but he had an uneasy feeling, the kind that comes just before a storm. And that is the end of chapter 18.